Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we want to talk about utilizing our new category map inside of our application. As a result, it makes this products provider seem a little bit incorrect. So what we need to do is think about refactoring our products provider so that it more accurately contains these categories that we want to use through our category map. To begin with, let's start with renaming. I'm going to name this categories context. And similarly, I'm going to have to rename this product context as categories context. Instead of showing products, we want to be more explicit that what we have is a categories map. And similarly, with the categories here, we want to switch provider also to categories provider. As for products, we're now showing a categories map and set categories map. Capitalize the C. And instead of this being an array, what do we want to know about a map? We know that the map's empty state is when there are no categories to show. So instead of showing null, we can just show an empty object. And the reason why we're going to use an empty object is because we're really interfacing with the object's keys in order to get the responding item for the category. So if we're trying to get it and there is no keys, then we're just going to get nothing back. And that's why we want to use an empty object instead of null, where you typically want to store like a full object. Here, it's kind of like a collection. And when you use maps, typically an empty map is the empty state of a map. So now that we have this, let's think about the actual value, which will also be our categories map. Similarly, we want to update the name of this file. So here, I'm going to switch this over to categories.context.jsx. And then with this now, we also have to update wherever we're calling it inside of our index.js. Because now we are no longer using a products provider. We are now using a categories provider. And similarly, this is no longer products context, it's categories context. So let's copy this over into our products provider. And then now everything should continue working. So if we go back to our application, we should see everything still works as we expect. If we have any issues, let's figure it out. Inside of our shop component, we can't resolve products context. Of course, we still have one more place where we're using it, shop context, or shop component, sorry. Here we see that our products context is what's being pulled in. So let's just call our categories context and pass that in here. And then similarly, we no longer have a products context. It is now a categories context. So let's save this again. Now, again, with use context here, we're not actually calling anything here inside because now products is no longer an array. So let's just comment this code out for now. And instead of showing products, let's also just delete this. And now if we come back, go to shop, still empty. Okay. Now let's go into our categories context. And now what we want to do is we want to set this category map to the actual value that we're exporting through our value here. So I want to call this set categories map setter on the category map that we get back from our method. And then I'm going to save this. And now back in the shop component, we need to think about how to utilize it. So remember, when you look at the shape of this component, it is an object that has a title for the key, which we need, as well as the items itself. So we need both of these values. And what we want to do is we want to iterate through this different items array to show the first 4 items for preview. And before we build out the component, let's just make sure we at least know how to work with this categories map object first. So I'm going to leverage this products container because all it is, if you remember from our styling, is that it is just displaying 4 columns. And what we're going to do for now is just display the first 4. We can actually display all of them, in fact, if we really wanted to, inside of the grid. The key thing is really just that we have some way to show that we're able to work with this component properly, this categories map. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this inside of a fragment. And if you've never seen this before, this is shorthand for fragment. Instead of importing fragment, you can actually just use this. But let's be consistent and let's just import fragment because that's what we've been doing up until this point anyways. And consistency is very important in a project. And now what we need to do is we need to figure out how to map through this categories context. But this is an object. How do we get these individual fields inside of this object? Well, there's actually a way you can do this. You can do object.keys, which will essentially allow you to pass this an object itself, and it will return you back an array of the keys. So here I can say, hey, let me give you the categories map. And what this will give us back is an array of all of these key values. So it's an array of strings where it contains hats, jackets, men's, sneakers, women's. And with this, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to map through this. And I know that what I have for the key is going to be the title value. It's not necessarily the title because it's capitalized, but remember, they're all lowercase when we put them into our map. Here, what I want to do is I want to now, again, use a fragment, because inside of this fragment, I want to show an H2 where I have the title. And then underneath this, I want to use this div. So here, I can really actually just copy this over and place this inside. Now let's uncomment this out. And here, what is products? Products is the array of products associated to this specific title, whether it be the hats, the sneakers, the jackets, the men's, the women's. How do we access this now? Well, remember, we had CategoriesMap, which is the object, and the object has these key values. The key is the title, which we clearly are destructuring off, or not destructuring, but we're getting it off of this object.keys. So this, when we call this, should give us the corresponding value of the associated array of products. And now we can just map through this with the appropriate product, and this should now work. Now it does look like I have a bit of an error here. Oh, it looks like that I have an extra bracket set. So this is not necessary. We only need one set of curly braces to render our JavaScript. So there we go. We also here need to explicitly return something back. So let me tidy this up right here where this is mapping through. I don't need this one and I don't need this one. There we go. Okay. This now cleans up what we had before. Before I was not returning from my function because I had squiggly brackets, but now I'm using a single line return. So if we come back, we see each child in the list should have a unique key prop. So let's do that as well. Inside of this fragment, I'm going to give it a key of the title because I know those are unique because it's a map. And now if I refresh, there we go. We see hats shows us these hat values. Jackets shows us these jacket values. Men's shows us these men values. And shoes shows us these different sneakers, and women's shows us these women's. So everything here is working. You'll notice also that because we're rendering our product cards, our cart continues to work. There we go. So here we've figured out at least how to work with this categories map. What I want you to do now for your challenge is that actually this should not show all of these products. We actually need to create separate routing for this at this shop level. What we need is we want the base route to just show these 4 first elements inside of each of the categories. And then when you click this actual value here, it should in turn take you to a corresponding / whichever page that shows the actual items there. There's actually one particular nuance to the routing that we're going to have to learn about in the next video regarding using dynamic parameters. But really what I want you to do is just really think about kind of how you might separate this. You don't have to code it out yourself, but just think about it. And in the next video, let's do it together.